Hi everyone, my name is Edwin Pinto. I'm working with DHL Global Forwarding. I'm based in Bangkok, and I've been associated with the supply chain industry for the last 21 years. I'm very much looking forward to sharing my experience on this chat.
Hi, Edwin. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Captain Leslie. I'm based in Dubai. I've been retired 2021 from my role in Transworld, where I worked for close to about 30 years. I'm now retained with them as their strategic advisor. And I've been predominantly in the PPL transport logistics arena. And this is a topic which is very close to my heart as well. And so I feel very privileged that I'm in the company of Edwin to discuss this today. Thank you.
So then let's get started on this conversation, Captain. It's an interesting topic and something that's come much more in the forefront in the last few years, given what our industry has experienced. And maybe you can kick this off by telling us, what do you think when you hear resilience in supply chain?
Thank you, Edwin. Basically, as we all know, this entire unprecedented issue of the pandemic raised a few concerns amongst us and, exposed our vulnerability of the entire supply chain with issues where hitherto we were not exposed to. So, just set up a conversation and exactly a thinking process within how to be more resilient and be able to withstand the disruptive forces that come along with these, changes that we've seen through pandemic and recently the war in the Ukraine and the sanctions that have been imposed post that. All this has affected the trade policies and the various corridors which people like us who've been, predominantly restricted to just supplying services in regard to 3PL. And I guess you could add in your context as to how this is something which is very, very important amongst us to ensure that we remain protected against such, untoward incidences which might disrupt the entire operation.
True, very much. In the sense, my view on this whole topic has grown over these last 2 years. Everybody talked that they had their supply chain very much in control. Everybody thought they knew what they were doing, but the sheer unprecedented nature of the disruptions that we faced in the last 2 years, I would say, exposed a lot of companies and brought forward that need for making their supply chains resilient. Gave it a whole new meaning, in my opinion, in the last 2 years. So people who thought we have the best supply chain network in the world in our industry were suddenly found so much wanting because they never expected the kind of disruptions that would happen. So I think that is why we are having this kind of conversation. This kind of conversation was not happening 3 years ago. So
right.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting how and what kind of actions people will take to prevent themselves against these kind of situations, which I think will become much more commonplace in the future. So, Captain, then out of all your experience, and I'd like to share also then what I have seen, but out of all your experience, what actions do you think companies have taken in the last 2 years, in the sense, in this area of becoming more resilient?
Right.
What have you seen?
Yeah, Edwin, I think like you just mentioned, and I take a point from there to say that, it's a global phenomenon. And you should probably bear me out here and probably, let everyone who's listening that, we have a lot of tiers within our entire supply chain, which starts from the time the order is made and the time the goods are received. So the fact that we all work within silos of all this, it's procurement, order, the upstream values in terms of how the manufacturers face the challenges. Then you have the downstream activities in which finally the last mile delivery is considered. So giving all this, we all work in silos. So my only concern from here derives that how do we eliminate the bottlenecks that we find that cause such disruptions. And eventually, it's only through experience that one can identify this. But then, if we all, as stakeholders within the tiers of all of the supply chain, sit down and understand and have an inclusive belonging, which I would call as a collaboration between all parties, I think there is an answer that can be found. It's not that we are not having resilient supply chain companies who are just working like headless chickens. No, there are responsible people and there are professionals who are handling this very, very correctly. But the unfortunate fact is that they aren't collaborating together to form a congenial but homogeneous body to have a very, very free flow of information, which creates total visibility and ability to foresee any risk factors that come in. I might just add here on the global side of the phenomenon, because of this, even countries have come up with plans. And I can quote the recent US Treasury of State Secretary Janet Yellen, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. She made a statement that, friendly nations should start combining their resources. And she coined a new word, which is called friend shoring. So this is a new buzzword now within all SCM people. But so you can see that, they're trying to see global trade which confines the commerce to a circle of trusted nations. And this is becoming very, very important within the global phenomena of trade policies to ensure that, supply is continuous, is maintained. I might also add that China took a very, very early initiative on this in 2013 and started the One Belt, One Road concept. So there are initiatives which countries have taken, and recently our Prime Minister in India, Modi, declared national logistic policy. So there are concerns amongst all the nations and the governing bodies to try and find out how to mitigate the risk and how to reduce the risk, in fact, to make this more resilient because it's very vital to have the connected.
You're touching a very, very important point, in the sense, the moment you use the word collaboration, that in my opinion, in the last 2 years, the success or failures of organizations in running their supply chains was based on how well they coped in collaborating with their partners. So absolutely right, in the sense I couldn't agree more. Even in my own personal experience, generally the trend tends to behave in the customer service provider type of relationship between manufacturers or buyers and service providers. But I think those days are passé in a way. Really, you have to carefully choose your partner and then absolutely plan collaborative efforts to manage your supply chains. And in my experience in the last 2 years, those customers who took a collaborative approach while working with us, we were able to together celebrate much more success than those who took an approach of, this is your problem, you have to solve this problem for me. And that's why with the moment you touched on the word collaborative, in the sense, it hit the nail on the head for me. The other point, Captain, that I wanted to make, and you alluded to it a little bit, on the whole importance of logistics and supply chain in the success of business, right? Previously, I wouldn't say just before the pandemic, but say 5-6 years, still 5-6 years ago, and you have been around for much longer than I have. Supply chain was a department that was also ran in the company. It was under some other department, and people were just, all the job was done, and then supply chain was moving the goods. I don't think it's anymore like that. I think now how sophisticated your supply chain design is decides whether you are fit to compete in your industry anymore. So I like to use the word that supply chain has moved from being just another department to coming into the boardroom and becoming part of boardroom discussions now. So therefore, if senior managements of large organizations are paying so much attention, I think the importance of supply chain is now finally getting recognized, and therefore this whole need of resilience and building supply chain designs that are successful is becoming so much more important.
I can't agree more. So, and one aspect of being very resilient, I mean, there are spin-offs. So it does attract individuals to take on this task very seriously, is because it gives you the competitive advantage finally in the end when you are more resilient, because in case of a pandemic or in case of any serious disruption, you'd be the first to bounce back. And if you're there first, you're heading the queue, and I'm sure all orders will flow through you, and then you're the recipient of all the goods. So, in other words, being resilient is a much needed thing if you want to be competitive and you want to grow your company, and of course, enjoy the results and the profits that does come with it. But enough to say this, I've all team members within the entire tiers of the supply chain do collaborate and are inclusive in this entire single-minded goal of trying to provide the OTIF, or what I would call as on time, in full concept. I mean, everyone benefits from this. And the biggest part for this side of the story is cost. All elements, point to a case where if you're cost effective, you're competitive, and then finally in the end, you can get a larger market share and enjoy the benefits of that. So enough on that. So let's move on.
Captain, if I may ask then, in your side of the world, I'm based in Southeast Asia. I've seen, of course, we are in a global market, but I've seen certain kind of actions being taken by companies on this side of the world, and I'd like to pick your mind on what you are seeing on your side of the world, on tangible actions that companies took in the last couple of years that you saw that was different from what was happening in the past. Like an example that which you slightly alluded upon was this whole area of sourcing from multiple locations. Previously, there was a huge element of single source providers, right, for services, and out here in Southeast Asia, there was a huge element of diversifying your sourcing portfolio, in the sense the American buyers or the European buyers suddenly started moving towards sourcing also from Vietnam or Thailand or Malaysia, other than just going to China in the first place, because of the lockdowns and the issues that single sourcing caused them. So that's just one of the aspects. What else did you see?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm privileged again to be located in the prime center of UAE, where as a flagship port, Jebel has taken on the initiative and even has proclaimed last week that 90%, 90% of the international trade will move through UAE. Now, that's a very, very bold statement to make. And obviously, you'll realize that, what needs to be done to ensure the connectivity for all this big statement that they're making is by no means, imaginable at this stage, but that's how far ahead they're looking at. Importantly, they have even gone to the point, as I mentioned, that they've even investigated the various tiers within the supply chain. And they even want to look at how they can ease the issue of custom control and port authorities in that basis of how they can ease this into a very simplified manner for, reducing the BCOs or the beneficial cargo owners' responsibility and the time that they can bring into to factor this. The issue is also looking at nearshoring, so as to be closer to all what the manufacturers can bring their products down to in Dubai, which can then reduce the lead time, bring in more values in terms of cost. And if we can discuss the few technological advantages that they are considering is phenomenal, because now they're looking at a unified platform which can bring all the trade and as well as the suppliers and the vendors and inclusive of the user, the final BCOs to collaborate on have a very easy platform to assess the as you just mentioned of how diversified one's outlook in terms of sourcing can be. That you don't from a single, you have the advantage of going right across. And I think they have included a lot of things in terms of automation through robotics and IoT, Internet of Things. We are all familiar with what IoT can do within warehouses in terms of RFID and scanners for all the barcodes and stuff like that. But then they have moved that all into data management in terms of how they can be doing predictive analysis in terms of how you could do a simulation to avoid in future any disasters or risks that you might encounter. So all this is under discussion. Everything is not laid out and done out, but then these are aspects which are being looked into very, very, very closely. And the biggest factor that I've always been advocating is machine learning for everyone, because finally in the end, AI will be our, let me use the word, something which we will not be able to do without. Now, how what AI can, what's the scope of AI in this whole program. And one of the biggest things and the challenges for an SCM manager is, predicting, forecasting forecasting demand, And if AI can help you to, bring this up, we can manage the capacities correctly. And then, what boils down thereafter is costs and connectivity, and finally, in the end, management of inventories and keeping down controls to see finally how smooth this entire chain moves, rather in face of normal volatility and also in severe disruption.
There is no doubting the importance that technology is going to play in this whole supply chain industry. What we have seen is an increase in the the awareness and the use of risk management tools. I think more and more organizations, especially organizations with large and complex global supply chains, are now beginning to see the importance of and actually put into practice the implementation of risk management tools into their supply chain. Um, are you seeing that kind of stuff happening in your side of the world? Because I see a tremendous push from large organizations out here where we just map their entire supply chains right down to every single lane pairs, to their suppliers, to their delivery points, etc. And you map that uh, live to disruptions happening around the world. It could be small disruptions, it could be large, but you map the disruption to the supply chain so you know exactly where you are facing the impact and be the first to react.
Absolutely.
And
So,
therefore get the competitive advantage. You see, and the demand for such tools is significantly increasing, more so than the demand for nearshoring, for example, or because nearshoring has its own challenges in terms of cost or in terms of uh, labor or capable labor to deliver to the requirements, etc. And nearshoring is also kind of a long-term commitment that organizations will have to make. It's not so easy for people to change their supply bases. But the use of risk management tools, I am seeing a significant demand as an answer to building much more resilience in the complexity of their supply chains. What do you see in this area?
no, this is, I mean, it is a do or die situation in this context because, either you're in or you're out. So the question is, AI will become the call of the future. So there's a huge rush now with every SCM to try and create more data points and collect as much as data as possible because AI will only work finally if you have included all possible data and for which algorithms have been written for them to come up with predictive analysis and stuff like that. So I mean, this substantial data collection effort is on, and as I mentioned that platforms which brings all the stakeholders together has been created by various companies and institutions as such are looking at this as an opportunity for everyone to come in and finally in the end what one gets is the fact of being totally in control, and this is a big factor of resilience because once you are in control you're managing your activities very soundly, and as I said earlier, the factor which builds the trust between all stakeholders is visibility of all activity from point A to point B. And DHL and the courier businesses, if I name some of you, if you're allowed to name, they've all fallen back on the issue of keeping the customer completely advised at every stage. So what we have a track and trace, and we didn't discuss this so much just now, but I think everything points down to the customer's needs and requirements. All what SCM is all about is the customer and his requirements. And if you set up something on a mountain which a customer can't reach, but you're just there with hoping to be the best, I think it's waste of time. So altogether. Sorry, you were saying something.
Track and trace itself has taken a whole new meaning, right, Captain Leslie? In the sense, yes. previously was simple portals, milestones were updated for track and trace, but now the demand for real-time visibility based on IoT devices, smart labels, checking the temperature of the goods, the humidity, the pilferage, etc. In the sense, all of this is becoming more and more real in people were only talking about it in the past, but now we see implementation of all these tools and all these technologies into supply chain becoming so much more real. So, I'd like to, kind of say that in the past, we used to see, supply chain discussions or supply chain procurement discussions being a cost-based discussion, not so much a value-based discussion. But I think now we are seeing, the first aspect that people want to discuss is how good is the supply chain design, how important is resilience, how important is business continuity plans in the solutions that we are offering to customers. And if all that is there, then we discuss cost. So there is a paradigm shift in the way supply chain professionals across the industry are now looking at how to source supply chains or how to source supply chain providers.
Absolutely right. So one new element that comes into feature right now is the ESG. And ESG is a controlling factor which sort of benchmarks the performance of the company in terms of how, not only how green you are in terms of GHG, greenhouse gases emission and stuff like that, but also on the social front, and how good are you on your compliance in terms of governance. And the entire thing is, how are you doing your work in trying to keep all the aspects of the environmental control that requires you to be a responsible native of this planet. So, you have brought out a factor of how a customer chooses his provider is basically awareness to this entire thing, and it's not that anyone can be insulated from this and to say that I don't want to follow ESG. If you don't follow ESG practices and you're not ESG compliant, you don't have a hope in hell to even be able to operate. And this they've done very categorically through IMO for the ships from 2023 January.
True.
So I don't see it very long for everyone to just move into this phase of being very standardized in your approach. And you are very correct in trying to see how the customer perceives your business plan and your activities, and how do you conduct yourself. And this has become very, very important for being just a company. You also have to be resilient to the fact that not only to all the disruptive forces, but you also have to align your processes within your operation to ensure that you conform to all these requirements, which makes you a very a proper company to operate and deliver the goods as what is asked from you. Thank you.
True that, in the sense compliance was never a question, even before the current situation. But I think the increased push towards procuring sustainable supply chains is again a trend that is becoming real. I keep using the words real because these were words that were being used for the last so many years, but they were not real. They were not happening. But now we see that happening thanks to a lot of push from governments as well, and now it is becoming a qualifying criteria for us to even work with certain large organizations. If we are not able to clearly articulate our supply chain sustainability strategy, there are companies around the world who don't want to even partner with us, and that is actually very welcome. That larger organizations have more responsibility towards taking those actions, even though sometimes it could mean becoming a bit uncompetitive. But I think in the long run, this is something that's going to become a competitive advantage again. So cannot agree more with you on the whole ESG topic and sustainability being right on top there.
Yeah, I too, Edwin, finally, in the end, it's not what we make out of our discussion, but I think what comes out of it in the end of how companies can, develop themselves to, sort of align themselves with the various issues that we have, also protect their businesses from all the disruptive forces that they might find, how flexible they remain. Ultimately, it's all about trying to resolve issues that the customer has and trying to have a very high level of a service with lower cost. So, I mean, it's easy said than done, and then it's not a cakewalk for anybody here. But the final aspect that I want to drive here is, if Dell brings in anything from our conversation, is the fact that collaboration is the key. If ever someone needs to be more resilient or more protected from the disruptive forces, the more you collaborate, the more you partner up with people in like ways, you are improving your competitive advantage, you're lowering your costs, and you're able to provide the desired services in case of disasters. That's all I've tried to use the word. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I can sign off with my thoughts here. Disruptions are here to stay, in the sense, considering what we have done to the planet or what we continue to do, we will see, man-made and not man-made disruptions, and how we cope, how we adjust to the disruptions is what will decide how successful we are. And therefore, aligning exactly to the point that you made, Captain, collaborating with stakeholders is going to be of paramount importance. First, focus on resilience than on cost is going to be very important, which used to be the other way around. And finally, putting technology to good use, to be tailor-made to your organization's needs, not just picking any technology because it's there out there, but understanding what's available there and tailoring it to the needs of your organization, and all with the mind of making your supply chain more visible and more resilient. I think this is what will help drive success, competitive advantage in your line of business. That's what I think I would like to say as we sign off on this chat. And if anyone would like to have a chat in more detail about these topics, I'm more than happy to discuss at any point of time. You can write to me at edwin.pinto@dhl.com, or through the DLC network. We can be in touch and share our experiences.
I wish to thank DLC for giving us an opportunity to air our views, so to speak. So
yes,
if there is any further, if you have any queries, I don't think you should have, because in the end we tried to be as simple as we could in our approach to the topic. And as we mentioned, it's very diverse, but should in the event you do need any kind of assistance or help, or in the role that I do, I'd be happy to oblige. That's all I can say. Thank you.